I'd like to welcome you to the virtual Mark Twain Library. I'm Elaine Sanders, the library's Adult Programming Coordinator, and I am delighted to be here with you tonight to welcome our speaker, Dan Sheehan. He's the owner and founder of Stars Ridge Technology, and I know I have a lot to learn about that tonight, so I'm going to be taking notes along with all of you, and I cannot wait to cut that cord, that cable cord. Dan is a fellow resident of Reading, and so I think he personally understands some of the trials and tribulations we have with the technology in our area. Prior to his work in the smart home technology and technology space, Dan spent 28 years in the cable television industry as a leader in information technology for some of the nation's largest broadband and cable providers. So we're very delighted to have all of his experience and expertise with us this evening. And we are recording tonight's program, so please let your friends and neighbors know if they were not able to join us. The recording of this program will be available to view in a few days on the library's YouTube channel. There's also going to be time for questions throughout the program, so please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A function at any time, and we will pause periodically to take those questions. And you can find the button for that feature on the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So thanks for joining us, and now I'd like to turn things over to Dan.
Thank you very much, Elaine. I appreciate the introduction, the kind words, and welcome everybody. I am going to try to make this as interactive as possible, meaning I'm welcoming questions. And so I'm going to make sure I pause from time to time, and Elaine will help me get those questions relayed so I can answer them. So what we're going to do is just dive right in. And the first part of tonight's presentation is going to be about cutting the cord, cutting the cable cord. I do have a few slides, so I am going to share that in just a second here. There we go. Make sure we make that presentation nice and full screen. There we go. All right. Okay. So this is all about cutting the cable cord, and that subtitle is How to Watch Your Favorite TV Shows While Saving Money. So what does that really mean? Well, let's talk about the background. Why are people doing this? This is some information that's out there and has been out there for a while, which is the price of your monthly cable bill versus inflation going back to 1995. And this is really only to 2015, and it probably looks a lot worse here in 2021. But as you can see, and I think all of you painfully are aware of, the cost of cable has really been skyrocketing over the years, and it's way ahead of the pace of inflation. And so that's obviously causing a lot of angst and heartache for everybody. So now you can see along the last several years, the number of people who are cutting the cord in the US has been steadily rising. And what does that mean, cutting the cord? Well, it means you're getting rid of your traditional cable TV box in favor of another way of watching TV. And there's really two primary ways of doing that now. The first is over the air. They call it OTA. That's just the old-fashioned antenna. Of course, now these antennas are a little bit more sophisticated. These are digital antennas, and you can watch the free digital broadcasts coming over the air from the New York City stations and some of the Connecticut stations, ABC, CBS, NBC, etc. That's the way we used to watch it many years ago before there was cable. But there are ways to do that, even living far away as we do. There's a lot of ways that you can pick up those signals, and there's a lot of digital broadcasts going on that for many people, that's plenty. But for people who like to get the cable networks, they might watch cable news or sports or some other movie and entertainment channels that they are used to watching and they like to watch on cable. There are the over-the-top services, and that uses your internet service to stream the TV live. It's a paid service, but as you'll see in a minute, it's a lot less money than your cable service for getting those same channels. And they call it over-the-top. That's an industry term because it means customers are not, they're watching TV over the top of the cable box. It's kind of an end around to not have to use a cable box to watch TV. Okay, first we'll talk about the local TV broadcasters, the over-the-air And in New York and Connecticut, you've got all of the major broadcasters, obviously. Out of New York City, you're probably familiar with Channel 7 ABC, Channel 4 NBC, CBS Channel 2, et cetera. But you can also pick up the Connecticut stations, Channel 8 ABC out of New Haven, and of course out of Hartford, which is a little bit further away. But I made a note here. There's a big caveat. You can pick up these signals, but it does depend on your elevation. How high are you? Are there any obstructions like hills or another building or trees, and how far away? I'll give you an example. I live in West Reading, up on Stars Ridge Road, hence the name of the company. And I can pick up just about all of the New York City stations with an antenna that I did mount outdoors because I do have an obstruction. There's a big hill over by Great Pond that's right in between myself and the antennas. But with the antenna outside and a little bit of a booster, I'm able to pick them up. And sometimes I do watch that. And the antenna can be indoors if you are really elevated up high and you've got a great view of that southwest sky. You may not even need an outdoor antenna. So that is number one. But of course, you're kind of limited. Again, it's only what's coming over the air, and there's no traditional cable networks available via over the air with your antenna. So that's where over the top, the live streaming TV services come in. It's very much like watching traditional cable TV, but you don't need a box. You do need, when I say a box, I mean a traditional cable box, but you need either a smart TV or one of the small streaming devices like Roku or an Amazon Fire Stick or Apple TV. And what I've got up on the screen here are really the 5 major live streaming TV services: YouTube TV, Hulu Live, which is different than regular Hulu, and AT&T TV, Sling, and Fubo. And again, these are monthly subscription services like cable, but they cost, as you can see, a lot less. What I'm not going to get into is how many channels each one of them has. They're a little bit different between each service, but you get 70 or 80 channels, including the local broadcasters, the ABC, CBS, NBC, for anywhere from $60 to $75 a month. And that's generally allows you to watch 3 TVs at one given time, watching 3 different programs if you have, that many TVs in the different rooms. Okay. So how does it work? I'm going to give you a quick example. One of the things that I learned in doing a test of this, when you stream live video over one of these services and you try to share it through a Zoom, it turns black because that's their way of making sure you're not sharing your TV with other people across the country. But that's okay. What I'll do is I'm going to stop sharing here for just a second. The nice thing about these apps or these services is that they provide you an app that you can use on your phone. I happen to have AT&T TV and I stream that. And so what I've done is I brought it up on my phone. I'm going to hold it up close and you can see that there's a guide. It's just like a traditional cable guide. And, you can scroll up and down and, see what's on tonight, see what's on later on. If you want, you can also record because they all include a DVR function where you can actually click on something. I happen to be watching, I think it's Jeopardy right now, although they're in a commercial. And if I decided that I wanted to record it, there's a little record button right there. Actually, it says cancel because I already had it recording. But again, this is a nice feature because aside from streaming on your TV, if you're out at the beach or the pool or you're out of town, you can bring up your phone and you can watch live TV right on your phone. So that is just a quick overview of streaming. And the average cable bill, I'm going to take some questions now in a second here. The average cable bill, especially for most of the customers that I work with and talk to, is well over $200 a month. Sometimes they have the phone service, but sometimes that's just internet and cable TV. But with these services, the streaming services at $60, maybe $75 a month, and if you have an internet monthly bill of $90 or $100 a month for your internet, that's, about $170 a month as opposed to well over $200 a month. And again, I'm sure some of you out there are paying more like $300 a month for your cable TV. So you can see there's a big, big savings that you can realize and still watch your shows. I'll say one more thing. I do have a document that I like to update and share with my customers, and I'm going to be putting it up on my website. It compares these services kind of in a spreadsheet, a comparison of the different channels that they carry, because they don't all carry the same networks, and they have some different features and pricing as well. So Elaine, I think I'll stop there. And I don't know if you've got any questions in the Q&A queue yet, but I thought this might be a good time to stop and see if we did have any questions.
Right. No, we do not have any questions yet, but
okay.
please feel free to pop them in, because, oh wait, I'm sorry, I take that back. One has just come in. My Optimum bill has credits that precisely make Fubo a break-even proposition. Is this unusual?
No, it's not. And that's a good question. So credits or discounts are often, given to certain customers. And I'll take a step back here. I worked in cable for many, many years. I didn't work in marketing, but I had to work with the marketing people because they are always coming up with different discounts, and they're called retention offers, I should say. Those are offers to keep customers who are calling up and saying, look, I'm going to disconnect my cable. And if you call up to disconnect your cable, they send you to the retention team, and the retention team says, oh, don't disconnect here. We got a deal for you for the next year. And then they will give you that discount for 12 months. And it may blow up to something higher after 12 months. But it's true that the cable companies are very aware that they are really losing these customers to these streaming services. So yes, they are trying to do whatever they can to keep those customers with discounts. But again, those discounts invariably expire, and then the bill goes up again. You can go on playing that game, and every year you can call up and get your discount. But for a lot of folks, it's nicer to just go with the streaming services, which are very low. They don't have a lot of the extra taxes and fees. For example, the regional sports network fees, they don't typically show up on these streaming services. The franchise fees do not show up. They're very clean. In other words, if it's $65.99 a month, it's generally $65.99 a month, and there's really no taxes on top. Plus, you don't have to pay for those cable box rentals every month, and each cable box is $8, $9, $10 a month. So it's something to think about, but you're right. Discounts can sometimes look like a break even, but if you look closely, a lot of times it's not quite as break even as you think. But that's a good question.
Yeah, we do have a couple more questions, so I will pop on here.
Yeah.
So even using an OTT service, Cablevision raises internet rates, and they have a lock on Reading. Any ideas on how to offset those increases?
So that's a good question too. You're right. As far as the traditional internet over the cable plant goes, Optimum is the franchise in Reading. A lot of people ask, well, why doesn't Xfinity come in here? We want some other competition. And there is. You have Frontier, but everybody knows Frontier is an older technology. It's that twisted pair, and it's much, much slower than Optimum. But you have to go back to the 1980s. Really the 1970s, when cable companies had to bid on the franchise with each town individually. It was not big, behemoths like Comcast and Optimum, et cetera. And so all these little cable companies went around bidding on building the cable plant in each town. And once they built that plant, which is hundreds of miles of wire, they owned the plant, and the franchise agreement with the town or the city allowed them to then sell their services. The problem is the 1996 Cable Act came along and said, look, that's gone. Anybody can come in anywhere and compete, but they have to build their own plant. Optimum's not going to let Comcast use all the wires that they put up. Comcast is free to come in and build their plant, but that costs millions and millions of dollars. They're just not going to do it. It's not worth it. So people complain it's a monopoly. It's not really a monopoly, but the problem is nobody else wants to come in and build the infrastructure required to compete with Optimum. And that's the same across the country. There are very few towns in this country where there are two completely equal cable companies. There are some, but they're very few and far between, as a lot of you may already know. So that's why Optimum is able to keep raising that internet fee, because they can. They're allowed under the regulations and under the laws to raise it a certain amount of a year. You can call, and I've done that recently, and complain, and they will give you a discount. I just got a $10 discount on mine because it went up, and I said, you know what, I don't like that. But that hopefully explains the problem with all of the cable companies, not just Optimum, and their internet rates. They're losing video customers, so all they can do is keep raising that internet rate to try to keep their revenue up. So that's a good question.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Should we be concerned about throttling or other broadband streaming impairments after cutting cable services?
Actually, the answer is yes. Now, not in Optimum land, which is where we live in Reading, but next door in Ridgefield and other Comcast areas, Comcast is now capping your monthly data. And that is causing a big problem for customers who have cut the cable. Because now, streaming video consumes a lot of data. And when they start capping that at 2, I can't remember how much it was now, but I know a lot of customers, a lot of people in Ridgefield are really starting to complain bitterly because they're seeing what's going to happen now. So you should be concerned about that. They're going to probably offer, what they'll do is like, no problem, just, pay us $50 more a month and we'll give you unlimited. So now that's going to start bringing the internet costs higher, and it's true. It may offset the savings that you get with going with one of the streaming services. So that is definitely a concern. I have a feeling that the other big companies are going to follow suit at some point, because if Comcast is doing it, they're the biggest provider in the nation, then the others, whether it's Spectrum or Optimum, they're going to follow suit at some point. They're going to start capping that monthly data. So yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, thank you. Betsy would like to know if she'd like to switch to streaming services. What does she need to do?
Well, it's a good question. It's actually pretty simple. You can go to the store, like Target or Walmart or wherever. You can go online and do your online shopping there, and you can buy everything you need. You do need a high-def television. And if you have a newer television, it may have what you need built into it. And what I mean is that's the software, or the capability to download the software for any of these streaming services. They all have their own app. So you can buy online, as I said before, a streaming device to plug into your TV if it's not a smart TV, like Roku. That's a very popular streaming device. Apple makes one called Apple TV. And Amazon, of course, has the Amazon Fire Stick and some other devices, the Fire Cube, etc. Those allow you to just plug those in, and they use Wi-Fi, and they stream your Wi-Fi signal into the box and streams that video right into your TV with an HDMI cable or an HD TV cable, if you want to call it that. And that's it. It's a fairly simple setup. Some people don't like to be bothered, and that's why I'm around. I have services and, helping people install the smart devices, the streaming devices, and get them set up with whichever service they decide happens to be the right one for them.
Thanks, Dan. I have some questions about SpaceX.
Yeah. I think that what they're talking about is the Starlink. That's the Elon Musk startup. You can get that now. I have not got it myself. I'm very familiar with it, though. I know the speeds are pretty good. I don't know, if it's ready for prime time yet. But I do know there are people right here in Reading who are, I think, on the cutting edge and have been able to get that. Again, I don't know anybody personally. I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody, but that's satellite based. They're actually beaming the internet signal down to your, you need to get, of course, a little satellite antenna that they provide to get that service. It all comes down to the speed. Is it going to stream the video well? And I don't know about the return. Now, there's also an upload process that has to happen to request it. They usually use a phone line for that when you want to, change your channels, because you can't beam back up to the satellite. It doesn't work that way. You have to get it there elsewise. But it's a good technology. I think that's you're gonna see more and more of that now as we go forward. The other thing that you're going to see is the rural broadband. I know T-Mobile has been rolling out rural broadband. What's that? It's using their mobile towers for their cell phone service, but they're providing internet. So they are they're not in Reading yet. I'm on their little waiting list to see if they are, but there are people who are getting rural cellular broadband as well. So again, those are new technologies that will compete with Optimum. So that might be good news. If there's competition, yes, it will bring the prices back down again, hopefully. So
Okay.
good question. Yeah.
And someone has noticed that you chose AT&T as for your service provider. And is that a good one? Why did you choose it? And can they find football games that they like online?
Well, that's a really good question. At least now, the only way you can get, the traditional Sunday ticket DirecTV is you have to have DirecTV. Now DirecTV was bought by AT&T. That streaming service that I have used to be called DirecTV and now it's called AT&T TV. It just has to do with the features and also the channels that you get, because certain channels, certain cable networks are not on one service, they might be on another one, and that's really important for people. And so for us, it just became a matter of, that's got a good lineup, we like it, but they're all good. YouTube TV is excellent. Hulu Live is very good. Fubo is very sports oriented, so it was started as a sports streaming, and now it's got pretty much everything. And Sling is pretty good. Sling is less expensive, and it's been around longer than the others. Although you can't get in this market, I don't think you can get ABC TV on it. They don't have an agreement with ABC. But it's to each his own. But you can't get all of those out-of-town NFL games streaming yet. They don't have that. You've got to get satellite if you want that. All you're going to get is whatever's on the major networks or ESPN for your football games.
Okay, great. Thank you. Maybe, do we have time for maybe one more question?
One more question about this, and then we'll move on to the next topic. So let's take.
Shelley has an antenna on the roof for the TV. She also has Frontier for Wi-Fi, and she streams. Do you know why with the antenna, basic channels come and go randomly?
Yes, there's several reasons. Sometimes, and you're talking about the basic channels over the antenna, so that means they have to travel through the air, and if you're getting the New York City stations, we're about 50 miles over the air from here to Manhattan. Weather can definitely affect that, the way weather affects satellite like DirecTV and Dish Network. The atmosphere changes, and sometimes it's just interference from other signals. Because again, at 50 miles, it's kind of a weak signal. And then any sort of little, interference in either in the radio waves around you or again, in the atmosphere can make those channels come and go. I've experienced it with my antenna as well. So again, we're kind of on the edge for getting the New York City stations. Channel 8 or WTNH out of New Haven is actually their towers that comes in all the time. Fantastic, because we're only about 20 miles or so from the tower, 25 miles. Once you get past 30 or 40 miles, it can be done. It's very, very difficult, especially if you got obstructions.
Do any local or any of the vendors allow us to get to our local channels? Like the Connecticut channels?
That's a good question. Boy, I could go into that too. You have to tell them your location. Reading is technically the New York City metro area. You get that. However, YouTube TV says, "This give us your, your zip code." They don't really confirm it. You can give them if you go to Waterbury, a Waterbury zip code or something closer to Hartford, you'll get the Hartford stations instead. If you really want the Connecticut stations, YouTube TV has a way to do it. I'll say one more thing, and then we'll move on to the next topic. There is an app that you can get on these streaming devices called News On, and you can watch live and replays of the local news. I know WFSB, CBS out of Hartford, that's totally free. You can watch the live news out of Hartford at 6 o'clock at night, for example. It's a free app. It's a very, very good little app for just watching local news. So more about that. later. Or
Thank you. Thank you.
why don't we move on?
I think so.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Wi-Fi. I don't have a Wi-Fi and internet, and I mean Wi-Fi and internet in your home. I don't really have a lot of visuals for this one, and I'm going to try to keep this non-technical because the number one service, at least in the past year, especially since the pandemic, that I provide is helping people improve their Wi-Fi in their home. Sometimes that means helping them improve the internet coming into the home. And it's two separate things, and I want to make sure we're clear. When people say Wi-Fi, they use that term kind of as a catch-all. But to have good Wi-Fi, you need two things. You need to have a good internet signal coming into your home and into your cable modem coming from Optimum. And then you need a good Wi-Fi router, or Wi-Fi delivery, which is really just antenna or antennas, if you have more than one, that are broadcasting a radio signal that your phone or your laptop or your all of your devices can pick up. So that means good Wi-Fi means you need those two important things happening. Sometimes, for example, you can have a great internet signal coming in the house, coming into your modem, but you don't have a good Wi-Fi router, or something's interfering with your Wi-Fi, and therefore you're just not getting good internet service on your Wi-Fi devices. Now, there's a way that you can tell that, and again, I don't want to get too technical, but if you have a way to plug a computer, a laptop, directly into your cable modem or your cable router, then, and you turn your Wi-Fi off on that, you can run a speed test, and it's simple to do. It's something I think that, you know what I'll do, maybe I can bring that up, because that's a simple thing to share. So let me bring up any one of my screens. Well, this was a router screen, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly switch this over to say, okay, let's see, where am I? I'm going to stop sharing that. I'm not sharing the right one. I'm gonna go old school here. I was using my phone before. I'm going to use my phone again. We're going to do a little quick speed test. Now, this is a Wi-Fi speed test that I'm going to run. And this is the Google speed test. And anybody can run this. You can run it on a laptop. You can run it on a phone like I'm going to do. But if you plug in your laptop and you run the speed test, you will find out how fast is the speed coming from Optimum before it even gets into the air via Wi-Fi. So I'm clicking on my speed, and I'm getting a very good speed. This would be an excellent speed if you plugged in. I'm not paying for anything more than 100 megabits download. Some people pay for 200. Some people pay for a gigabyte, which is a lot. But I'm getting 100 megabits, 112 megabits download. My upload is 34, which is very, very good. Also, that's a good number. Optimum does provide a good upload speed. So if you plugged in to your router and you ran a speed test like that, that's good. Then if you were to use your phone like I just did and run a speed test over Wi-Fi, and it was much lower, if it was 10 or 20, now you've got a problem going on with your Wi-Fi. And what can cause that problem? A number of things. One could be just a really bad placement of your router. It could be buried in the basement. A lot of people, they just leave their modem down in the basement because that's where the cable company put it, and that's where it stays. But the problem is Wi-Fi is a radio signal, and if it can't easily pass through the walls or the floors in your house, when you get upstairs, you just don't have a good signal, and it's a very degraded signal. That happens a lot. If your modem is upstairs, and maybe if you stand near your modem, you get a good signal, but when you walk further away from it, there could be a lot of reasons for why that's happening. If you live in an area where there's lots of neighbors close by, which not in Reading, we don't really see that too much, but in places in Ridgefield, for example, people who live in one of the condo developments like Casagmo or Fox Hill, they have a ton of other neighbors with their own Wi-Fi right near them, and that causes interference. It's just radio signal interference, and that can really degrade the Wi-Fi signal. Again, not likely to happen in a single family home with a lot of property because your neighbors are far away. But the final piece is, you may just not have a great Wi-Fi router to begin with. A lot of the cable modems that when they rent you the cable modem for $12 a month or whatever it is. It's all in one. And they're mostly pretty good, but but they're not the most powerful Wi-Fi signals in the world. And especially if you've got a kind of a ranch house that spreads out far and wide, again, the farther away you get from it, the worse it's going to be. So the first thing is, once we determine that the modem is getting a good signal, we plug into it, we get a good speed. Now we start talking about the Wi-Fi. What I like to do is if I've got customers that have a big house, it's over 3,000 square feet, especially if it's spread out like a ranch, I like to recommend that they get a mesh Wi-Fi system, or a system that has a router with satellites. In other words, it's not just one unit, it's multiple units that you can now spread around the house. The good mesh Wi-Fi systems can really dramatically improve the Wi-Fi throughout the home. And again, over the past year, I've spent a lot of time installing these systems for many, many customers all around Fairfield County, because they're working from home, they're on Zoom like we are right now, their kids are on Zoom for school, and they're using a lot of Wi-Fi bandwidth in the house, and you need a more robust system than usually what you get from the cable company. But the good news is you don't have to rent the modem from the cable company. You can buy your own modem, and you can buy your own Wi-Fi system that's much, much better than what you get from them and what you lease from them every month. So again, that's a real quick overview of internet and Wi-Fi. Maybe it's time to take some more questions now, Elaine. I thought I'd stop there because, again, I don't want to go any further because it'll just get more technical than we really want to get.
Right. Because we do have a basic question, which I must admit I get confused about this. What is the difference between a modem and a router?
Good. All right. It's a great question. So the modem itself is what you need to connect to the cable line that comes from the street, from Optimum. That modem takes the signal that comes from Optimum and it converts it into computer data, or a network data that a computer can understand. So it's really, that's where the signal gets converted to what we're familiar with as a network connection. Now, if we turn the clock back about 20 years or more, I was working in the cable system in Staten Island, New York. We launched the Time Warner Cable's Roadrunner there. In fact, I had the first cable modem in Staten Island in a house as a test, because that's what I was doing for the company. But back then there was no Wi-Fi. It was just the modem. The modem was there, and you had to plug a computer into it. And you had to have your computer right near the modem, right? A lot of people don't remember that. So a modem does one very simple thing. It converts the cable signal to a computer network, Ethernet signal as it's called, and you can plug into it. Now, Wi-Fi goes a step beyond that. Wi-Fi takes that signal, and the router itself, and a router now can, and I'll take one more step back. A router does not have to be a Wi-Fi router. A router is a device that then takes that one Ethernet network signal, and it splits it up into many different ports, as they're called, and it assigns a special network address to everything on that network that you plug into it. So either you plug into the router, or the router also has the Wi-Fi signal. Wi-Fi is radio, so think of it that way. It's a radio signal that broadcasts to devices that, every phone has an antenna in it for Wi-Fi. Every laptop has an antenna. Your smart TV has an antenna in it to pick up that signal and talk to the router via the radio waves and get that network connection going without a wire. That's what it's all about. So a router spreads a signal with Wi-Fi or with little ports. A modem just converts the signal from the cable company into a network data signal. I hope that helps.
Thank you for clarifying. That did. And also, how do you feel about Wi-Fi, or what do you think about Wi-Fi extenders?
Wi-Fi extenders are not very efficient at all. Before the newer mesh systems came along, that's all we had. The problem with extenders is they plug into the wall and then they talk to that Wi-Fi router. The problem is they use the same Wi-Fi channels to talk to the router as you need to talk to the extender. And it's kind of like it's like a Reading Road, where you're driving down the Reading Road and there's a truck coming the other way, and nobody can pass, and you got to get around, and it's just, you're both using that same roadway, and it slows the data down. So when they came up with the newer technology, the mesh technology, they use a separate radio signal or a separate radio channel for the satellites to talk to the router. So they detour around the main road that you want to be on, so that there's no truck coming down the way with the data in it. That's on its own separate channel. So extenders are very simple technology. They're just not very efficient. And I've unplugged a lot of extenders in the past year and said, here, you can take this and put it away, sell it on eBay or throw it away. You just don't need it anymore.
Okay. And you had mentioned the mesh system before. Does that work with the modem and the router, or any modem and router, or do you need to have something?
It can work with any modem and router. Generally, it's good to have a modem with no Wi-Fi built into it, just a standalone dedicated modem. And then the mesh router or the Wi-Fi router plugs into that and operates on its own separately. And that's why that's why I recommend buy your own modem. You can get your own modem, and you can get rid of that $12 a month. I think that's what it is now, at least in Reading. It's different. It's more in Ridgefield. They pay $14 a month or more for that modem lease fee. But a good, modem, a fast modem, you don't have to pay more than $100, maybe $150 for the modem. The mesh Wi-Fi systems, the good ones, are expensive. You're going to spend over $200, over $300 in some cases, depending on how many units you get. They are expensive, but after a couple of years, you're not leasing that little cable modem router all in one unit anymore. You will get that money back, and of course, you'll experience much, much quicker Wi-Fi all around when you do have a very good mesh system in there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mike is wondering why it seems like after a day on Zoom meetings that his modem needs to be rebooted. And are there buffers that are not being flushed? Is there a better way versus rebooting that he can handle that?
That's a good question, but it's a really complicated question because there's so many reasons why that could be. Yes, the answer is yes. Sometimes modems, they need to get reset or rebooted because there is a memory cache even in modems that sometimes has to be flushed. Generally, that should not be the case though. There actually are some modems on the market that do have this problem. There is a set of chips that were just not the greatest in the world, and they had that sort of memory problem. There's a list out there, and there's websites that say, here are the modems, don't buy this modem as it's got this bad chip. It's called a Puma chip. You can look that up if you want to Google it, but you stay away from those. So you may have one of those modems, for example, Mike, that has the bad chip in it. I don't know what model you have, but yes, there are modems that have that. And then sometimes, the networks, and I mean, let's talk about the optimum cable networks in the area, in the region, and throughout the country have been really hammered this past year with people working from home. Sometimes it happens every day at the same time. Why? Because the network is just bogged down with traffic. And sometimes rebooting the modem, it seems like it comes back quicker. It might just be coincidental that you rebooted your modem and then Optimum's network congestion problems cleared up. It's a very difficult problem to diagnose sometimes why your modem slows down. You have to reboot it. And sometimes I have to be in a home for 2 hours and figure out why they're having a problem. There's sometimes, and here's something else everybody should know. If you have a lot of cable outlets in your home with the little, the round cable outlets, and you have splitters and you've got wires in the basement, every time there's an outlet or a splitter, that is an opportunity for what's called signal leakage. And that's the signal coming from Optimum. If it's got more places it can escape, or that other interference can come into your cable line because you don't have these splitters tightened up and they're not plugged up, that can slow your modem down a lot, I should say your data down. I have been in cases where I've gotten rid of splitters that were unnecessary and tightened things up and made sure there was no loose cables anywhere. And all of a sudden their internet speeds doubled because we just tightened everything up. That's the simplest thing that you can do is, and sometimes that's the problem. So.
Great. Thank you. Do you feel a need to move on to the next section?
Sure, we can do that. Well, we're going to talk about just smart home technology, home automation in general. And what does that mean? So we've got all of these, let's say we've got our internet working great and we don't have to worry about that anymore. We've got good Wi-Fi, we're streaming our TV. But somebody bought you for Christmas a video doorbell or a smart thermostat. And maybe even one of the new smart light bulbs that they have. You can actually connect your light bulb to the Wi-Fi. Well, what can you do with all that? Well, they all come with their own little app. And what I mean by that is the companies that sell the video doorbells, they sell the thermostats, they sell the smart light switches, also the little smart plugs. You just put them in the wall and you can connect them to the Wi-Fi. So at the very most basic level, you have an app in your hand now, and you can open it up and you can turn a light switch on or off. So for example, I happen to have a lot of light switches in my home on the Wi-Fi. I'm sitting here in my dining room. I'm going to shut it off, and now I'm in the dark. And I did that right here on my phone. And that's great because you don't have to get up anymore to go turn the light switch on or off. You can, open up your phone and you can turn it. I can turn it back up, so I'm not so much in the dark anymore. That's better. And you can do the same thing with your thermostat. You can do the same thing with your video doorbells. That's assuming that they're installed properly and somebody did a good job installing them. But the nice thing about all of this technology is you can tie it all together, and you can use not only apps, but you can use voice control. So I think everybody's familiar with all of the smart home assistants, the smart speakers. There's the Amazon Echo. That's the most popular home assistant in the world, certainly in this country. But Google makes one also, the Google Home, it's called. Google bought Nest. They used to call it the Google Nest Home. Now they just call it Google Home. Apple makes one too, uses Siri. It's called Apple HomeKit. I'm sorry, HomeKit. Not quite as popular as the others, but it works as well. There's a few others, but really the two big ones that for consumers anyway are Amazon and Google. And I happen to have Amazon in this home. And so we use it a lot. We use it for the lights. We use it for the thermostat. We use it for, seeing what's at the front door with our Ring doorbell. But you can also use Amazon and other apps to create some routines where you tie things together. Some of them can be based on the time of day. So for example, I've got some outdoor lighting that I've got set up to turn on at sunset and turn off again at sunrise. But you can also create routines that are based on a keyword. You might say to your Amazon assistant, you say, good morning. After you say the wake up word, I'm not saying the wake up word, and you know her name, it begins with A. Because if I say it, all things are going to be happening here we don't want to happen. I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute. But you could say good morning, and certain lights could turn on in your kitchen. You could have a certain music start playing on the smart speaker. And you could also have her read today's weather to you at the same time. But you set all that up, and all you have to say is good morning, and it all happens automatically. That's called a routine. You can set them up in the Amazon app. I'll show you that a little bit later too. There's also a lot of home security systems and home security devices that you can hook up the same way. When you leave your home, it can make sure that you've locked the door behind you, and there's automatic door locks that will do that. Again, I could go on and on about all of the devices. There are literally hundreds of them on the market now. The biggest challenge people have, my customers have, is figuring it all out, how to make it all work together, because they're all different manufacturers and different apps, and so it can get confusing. So that's why Amazon comes in handy, because all these devices, most of them, can be recognized by the Amazon app and by the Google app and by the Apple app, so that you can have them all in one place, okay? And then they can all work together. So how does the voice control work? Well, sometimes you don't need a routine. If it's a simple turning on and off of a light, you can just tell her to do that. So I'll start with the demonstration now. Alexa, turn off the living room. Now behind me is the living room, and if she obeys me, then she will actually turn on there. There we go. I have them on dimmers, so they're a little bit slow. But that's really it. Now I might decide I'm going to have a dinner party, and I just want them at 50%. I can actually just say, I can make a routine that says, I can say Amazon, it's party time, and then all these lights would turn on to 50%. Or I could just say, Alexa, turn the living room on 50%. And then the lights will dim back up to just 50%. So that was kind of the quick and down and dirty way to do it. Now I happen to have a Ring doorbell, and Ring is owned by Amazon. Amazon and Google have just bought everybody up, right? And they're just kind of fighting it out right now. But even though it's dark out right now, and I've got my Amazon device here is called the Echo Show. It's the one with the screen. So I can say at any time, Alexa, show me the front door. And
Okay.
Thank you. And now I can see, well, it's going to activate. It's not that light out. As soon as it connects, I'm sure it'll be nice and dark. And there we go. It's kind of dusk outside. But that's nice, because if I ever want to see who's at the front door, if somebody walks up, I hear the little alarm, I can ask and say, okay, show me that front door. So again, voice control is becoming more common with a lot of things in the home, as you can see. And again, it's all about understanding the way that everything works together. They try to make it easy. They try to make it simple. They claim that it's simple, but it's not always as simple as it seems. And sometimes we'll ask her to turn on the light, and she has a hard time saying, I'm having a hard time right now doing that. And you don't know why. It's because it goes to the cloud and it comes back and it gets lost along the way. So the technology is not perfect by any means. Another thing that I want to talk about too, and I'm going to take some questions about this, because this is a big topic and we could probably talk for an hour about this. A lot of people are very rightfully concerned about their privacy with these apps that are listening to you and recording your voice every time you say something, whether it's Google or Amazon, even Apple. Apple is the best when it comes to trying to protect your privacy with their apps and their phone and everything else. They're not perfect, but they're better than Amazon. They're better than Google. And I'm not paid by any of these companies. I just want to say this right now. I'm just giving you my own take on this. But you want to protect your privacy, and you don't want your recordings of your voice hanging around all the time, because every time you use that little wake up word, they record about 10 seconds of your voice, and then they keep it. They'll keep it as long as they can, unless you tell them to delete it. So you can set your Amazon settings, and there's a place under your activity menu where you can go in and look at your voice history, and you can just delete everything. But you can also go in and you can set a little setting to delete by voice, so that you can say to anytime you want, you can say, Alexa, delete everything I said today.
You'd like to delete the recordings of everything said to me today. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll delete them.
Okay, so now Amazon doesn't get to keep my voice recordings. At least I can take back some of my privacy, not all of it, but it's nice to be able to do that. And real quickly, we'll get to some more questions about smart home automation and smart home devices. This is a great thing to have in the kitchen, because you can use it for recipes and you can do conversions. For example, you can say, Alexa, how many ounces in a quart?
1 quart is 32 fluid ounces.
That's good. And I even get to see a picture of that too. Or the kids can use it for homework and say, Alexa, what's the square root of 553?
The square root of 553 is approximately 23.516.
Okay. Anyway, they come in very handy for those sorts of things. All right, I'm going to stop again, Elaine, and we've got some time for questions on smart home.
Okay, great. Thank you. Someone would like to know, with the smart home devices, how we can protect ourselves against hacking, especially door locks and garage doors.
Okay, so I think that the question is they're concerned that with all these devices that people can hack. That's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
It's an excellent question, as a matter of fact. I'll use one example. Ring is a really good example of a company that had to really help their customers protect their privacy when it comes to people hacking. There was an incident many years ago. It seems like it was actually more than 5 years ago, where somebody, they thought that they got hacked, and that the Ring servers got hacked because there was a camera in a child's room and someone was talking to them who wasn't the parents or anybody else. That was very scary. As it turns out, the owner of that device, they had a really, well, somehow got their own individual password stolen. So someone was able to get in to their Ring account because they stole their password. Now Ring decided, okay, no more. Every time you log in, we're going to send you a text, or we're going to do what's called two-factor authentication. You don't just get in with a password. You got to have your phone. Okay, here's a text, give us a 6-digit code, and now you can get in. It's a good question because, that's a whole other topic, is security and cybersecurity. And I help customers with that too. Make sure they have, unique passwords for everything, because really that's the way that criminals and other bad people get in, is they just basically figure out your password, or they steal it from somewhere, or some system got their entire, let's say you see in the news, all of the data was stolen from a server, including passwords. And if you use that password in that system in 10 other places, all of a sudden these people can get into the 10 other places because you use the same password. The biggest problem with garage doors, I'll say this in a minute, these companies, they don't want you to say, Amazon, open the garage door. They stop because people could just shout in the window, open the garage door, and your garage door will open. That's something they've locked down. I could spend like an hour and a half talking about security. All I can say is this: don't use the same password twice, period. And use two-factor authentication whenever you can, which is, password and then send a text message. That's the best advice that I can give you on that right now. I hope that helps answer the question, but it's a tough topic. It really is.
Thank you. That was great advice. No, good to know.
Yeah.
That's the only question I have on smart home devices.
Oh, okay. We can go back to other questions. If there's no more smart home questions, if we want to go back to Wi-Fi or cutting, I'm happy to talk about anything. We'll just open it up.
Okay, very good. Yes. So please pop in any questions that you might have. There was one question earlier. Let's see if I can find it. Let's see. There was just some questions about the pandemic and remote working from home. And do you feel that there's going to be, what is your opinion on the retention of the couch potato pulses during this time period? Is it going to, and how it has changed our viewing? Is that going to stay?
Well, that's a really good, I'm not a sociologist, so that's a good question for them. But it's a really good question. For sure, a lot of the pandemic has changed a lot of habits, not just, these technology and streaming and viewing related habits. It's accelerated a lot of things. I think movies, going to the movie theater to see first run movies, that has really changed because all the studios were forced to release them at home for streaming. That is going to remain a part of like movie watching now when new movies are released. Not all movies, but I think that's something that's changed a lot. And how we do our shopping and a lot of things have changed because of the pandemic, and a lot of it's technology related. And I don't think we really know yet what the full impact is going to be. It's still kind of new, but for sure, yeah, it's a good question because I don't really know the real answer to that. I think only time will tell on what we're going to see happening over the next year or 2 or 3 or more because of everybody getting used to just being at home all the time, right?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good question.
For your thoughts on that. What fiber product comparable to Verizon can you get in West Reading, and one that's good?
Oh, that's a really good question. So you're talking about Fios. Verizon has been marketing that in certain communities for a long time now. Fiber to the home, that's what it is, rather than a traditional cable. So Optimum is rolling out fiber in Reading. There are places in Georgetown where you can get it. You can't get it in West Reading yet. I know that. I live here, and I know we can't get it here, but it's coming. I know some customers who've got it. I know in New Canaan, for example, I've got a customer there that signed up right away. They were able to get the Optimum fiber service. It's very fast. She got it for a really low, they are really lowballing these introductory rates. She told me it was $75 a month for fiber. I was like, wow, that's a great price if that's true. So yeah, that's going to happen very soon. Again, I don't know what the pricing is going to be. That's just, what a customer in New Canaan told me. I don't know what the speeds are going to be, but it is coming soon. Most of the major fiber trunks are pretty much laid out. and I mean the main roads where they put the main fiber trunks themselves. They're pretty much laid out now in Reading, and now it's getting it to the individual neighborhoods and then down to the individual homes. And again, Georgetown is where they're starting because it's a little more, it's easier because it's a little more compact there. The homes aren't quite spread out as far as they are in a place like West Reading or Reading Ridge or something like that.
Okay, thank you. So somebody has been asking about Altice and how does that, how does it differ from other services?
So Altice, it's Optimum. Altice is the company that bought Cablevision several years ago, and Optimum is a brand name. Altice is another brand name. They used to use the name of the company. So Altice One, that's a single box that just brings everything into one box. Your TV, your internet, your phone, if you got phone, and it has all kinds of extra fancy features that they call it smart Wi-Fi. Which is just kind of a brand name for they do have kind of a mesh system the way Xfinity does. They have little X5 pods. It's just a branding for a different product. Altice is still run by Optimum, and that's just the name of their fancy latest and greatest box that provides you with all kinds of extra TV and internet, and they can charge you more for it basically because it's fancier. That's all it is. That's all.
Okay, very good. And we've gotten multiple questions on the Roku, Apple Fire Stick, those types of devices. What are the differences, and what are the like the best ones that you would recommend?
They're all very comparable. Apple TV is probably the cream of the crop because it's really well made. The interface is fantastic. It's so easy to use. They're all fairly easy to use, and this is my own opinion. But they all deliver the same streaming services. The only difference is the interface to how you see the menus and see the apps and get to them. I will say that there are some apps, gosh almighty. Well, we don't have anybody with Spectrum TV. Spectrum has a streaming app for their cable customers, but it's only available on Apple TV and not on Roku, for example. But for the most part, they all can get you the streaming apps that you want, whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime or the streaming services we talked about earlier. I will say though, if you have a 4K TV, you want to get the 4K model, which is the higher definition. And you want to get the one with lots of memory. If you have a lot of streaming apps, your older, streaming devices can get filled up with all the apps. There's no more memory left. So you want to make sure you've got one with lots of memory. But all of them, Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, they're all very good. They'll all give you the same thing.
And do you need one for each TV?
Yes.
Okay.
Once you have a smart TV, with the built-in, because the new Samsungs and Sonys have fantastic built-in streaming software. But yes, you need to stream. Each TV needs its own streaming device, whether it's a built-in or you've got a Roku or a Fire Stick or an Apple TV.
Okay, great. And someone's TV is telling them that the Wi-Fi is off, sometimes quite loudly. Is it important as the TV works well on Optimum? What should they do?
Their TV is telling them that the Wi-Fi is off. Well, the Wi-Fi needs to be on in order to stream something. Now, if you're watching with a traditional cable TV box, if you've got an Optimum cable box, that's how you watch your TV, you may not need the Wi-Fi to be on your TV, but your TV will still complain that it's off. I can't offer any more than that because without being there, I'm just kind of guessing as to what the problem is, because if you're watching TV but the Wi-Fi is off, that means you're not using Wi-Fi to watch streaming TV on that TV. So I don't know if that helps or not. I'm sorry if it doesn't. I'm not quite sure I got the question right.
Thank you for trying.
Yeah.
Another question about mesh Wi-Fi. Does it work well for outbuildings? For example, a garage or a barn that might be 100 feet away or so from the main house?
That's a really good question. The really highest end mesh Wi-Fi systems will go 100 feet or more from one building to another. But those are $1,000 mesh Wi-Fi systems. There are other options though and I've installed these in a customer right here in Reading who has 2 outbuildings, a garage that's already separate, and then he had another barn built for his collector cars. They're like 100, 200 feet apart. There are little devices. They look like little cell tower antennas. They look like little square boxes. They beam internet to each other. You have a pair, like a master and a slave, like a mile away. And you plug in a router cable into one of them, and then you set it up at the window or maybe outside because they're outdoor rated. And then you plug the other one in. You have to have power out at that outbuilding, of course. If you've got power out there, it could be half a mile away and it's got a line of sight. Then it will beam that internet, or I'm sorry, that Ethernet signal, which carries your internet to that outbuilding. And then you have to plug in a little Wi-Fi router out in your outbuilding. And now you've got Wi-Fi out in your garage or your barn or whatever. And these little pair, they cost maybe $150 each, or each pair. And as long as you can plug them into, you can transmit, like I said, a mile away. Some of these things, they're fantastic and they're very inexpensive.
Okay, great. And maybe we have time for one last question here, Dan. Somebody has many devices. Will they need a more megabyte plan, or should I consider another modem line? For example, I have many Sonos speakers and apps for smart bulbs.
That's a good question. That's an excellent question. The answer is, unless all of those devices are online streaming out of your house at the same time, a megabit plan is maybe overkill. Because let's talk about Sonos, and I work with Sonos a lot. Sonos is a music streaming device. Music is not a high bandwidth consumer. It is not, you don't need a megabit to stream a lot of Sonos devices at once. As a matter of fact, you don't need a megabit to stream 2 or 3 high def TVs at the same time. You need good quality Wi-Fi with no interference. But if you have, let's say 200 megabits coming into your house, that's the download speed. 200 megabits, as long as that you've got a good Wi-Fi system and it's delivering you, even 100 megabits throughout the house when you do a test, that's plenty. The people with a megabit, if they've got lots of kids playing games, like they're on their Xbox, 2 or 3 Xboxes at once, and they're doing multiplayer game, yeah, okay, you probably need the megabit because they're going to complain to mom and dad because their gaming is not going fast enough. But megabit it's a great service to have, but most people don't really need it. That's the short answer.
Okay, great. Well, Dan, thank you. You've shared a wealth of information, answered so many questions, solved lots of problems for us. So we appreciate you being with us this evening.
And if anybody does want to write me, it's starsridge.com. That's the website. You can write to Dan at starsridge.com. I have a feeling I get a lot of emails. I'll answer them all. I promise, with your questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody tonight. And these are great questions. And I hope everybody got something good out of this.
I think so, Dan. There are lots of words of thanks coming in.
Okay.
So, in the chat and everything. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everybody. Good night.